One night in 2009, a Ukrainian policeman answered a strange call about a man whose chewing gum had exploded. The officers couldn't believe what they saw. The victim, a young chemistry student named Volodymyr, was left with a horrific injury to his lower face. How could ordinary gum cause such a terrible outcome? As investigators examined the scene, they discovered a shocking mix of everyday items and hidden dangers. This case would reveal the lethal power behind one simple mistake. The incident. On a cold day in Konotop, Ukraine, police were called to a strange scene. A passerby had heard a sudden bang from a nearby apartment and feared something bad had happened. The officers rushed to the address, unsure what they would find. Once they arrived, they discovered a 25-year-old student named Volodymyr lying on the floor. His lower face was horribly injured, as if something had blown it apart. Medics arrived, but there was little they could do. Volodymyr died before they could save him. The immediate question was what had caused this tragedy. At first, people suspected some kind of attack or gunshot. The reality turned out to be much stranger. Volodymyr had been chewing gum just before the explosion. Police spotted remnants of gum near his face, along with mysterious powder on a nearby table. They took samples for testing, hoping to explain how ordinary gum could detonate so violently. Investigators learned that Volodymyr studied chemistry at a local institution. He was known to do experiments at home, sometimes mixing chemicals in ways that were not always safe. On that day, he had two powders on his table. One was citric acid, which he liked to add to his gum for flavor, and the other was a potent explosive compound called hexogen. The two looked nearly identical, so it was likely Volodymyr got them mixed up. When he took a piece of gum and dipped it into what he thought was citric acid, he was actually coating it in hexogen. Hexogen is far more powerful than TNT, and any friction or impact can set it off. Unfortunately, that seems to be exactly what happened here. Once Volodymyr started chewing, the shock or pressure triggered the explosive, causing a blast inside his mouth. The force was so strong that it tore away a large portion of his jaw, leaving him fatally wounded. To the police, this was one of the most disturbing calls they had ever handled. They had never seen gum turn into a deadly weapon. The tragedy served as a warning about the risks of experimenting with chemicals at home. Sometimes a simple slip can lead to unthinkable results. Though this case was rare, it reminded many people that curiosity can be dangerous without the right precautions. For Volodymyr, that single mix-up ended in a shocking and heartbreaking loss of life. This incident gained attention since no one expected something as simple as gum could be lethal. Experts urged students and hobbyists to keep dangerous compounds locked away and separate from everyday items. In the end, a tragic mistake turned a normal evening into an unimaginable nightmare. Unusual cause. Volodymyr was a 25-year-old chemistry student living in Konotop, Ukraine. He had an odd habit. Before chewing gum, he liked to dip it in a powder for extra flavor. Usually that powder was just harmless citric acid, the sour-tasting substance found in lemons. But on one tragic day, he grabbed the wrong container by mistake. Without realizing it, Volodymyr dipped his gum into a powerful explosive compound called hexogen. The result was a sudden blast that destroyed the lower half of his face and took his life, leaving everyone around him horrified and confused. This incident shocked not only the local police, but also people across the region. At first, officers had no idea how a simple piece of gum could act like a tiny bomb. They checked Volodymyr's belongings, hoping to find some logical explanation. What they discovered was both surprising and chilling. Volodymyr had been storing different powders in his home for his private experiments. One container held citric acid, while a second held hexogen, an explosive known to be 4 times stronger than TNT. He must have mistaken the hexogen for citric acid when he reached for something to dip his gum into. The idea that gum could explode seems impossible at first. Yet, if someone chews on an explosive compound, the pressure of biting and the warmth of the mouth can be enough to trigger a reaction. In Volodymyr's case, this reaction was so strong that it caused a blast, leaving him with injuries too severe for medics to treat. No one hoped to see such a bizarre and tragic end come from something as common as chewing gum. Investigators believe that Volodymyr never meant to harm himself or anyone else. He was simply a curious student who mixed up two similar-looking powders. Both citric acid and hexogen can appear as white granules, making it easy to confuse them, especially if the containers were not clearly labeled. This error, though, proved to be fatal. The police took all the materials for testing, which confirmed that hexogen was indeed the cause of the explosion. This story of a gum-related blast is a grim reminder that mistakes can happen when people handle dangerous substances at home. Even familiar items like gum can become hazardous if mixed with the wrong chemical. Volodymyr's tragedy underscores the importance of proper labeling, storage, and caution. While curiosity can be a good thing for students and hobbyists, forgetting to stay safe can lead to terrible accidents that no one would ever expect. Chemistry experiments gone wrong. Chemistry experiments can be exciting, but they can also lead to terrible outcomes when handled carelessly. One striking example is the story of a 25-year-old chemistry student, Volodymyr, who lost his life in Konotop, Ukraine, after an experiment went horribly wrong. He often worked on various tests at home, where he kept different powders for his projects. Sadly, poor labeling and a simple oversight cost him everything. Volodymyr had a quirky habit of flavoring his gum with citric acid. On the day of the accident, he mistakenly dipped his gum into a powerful explosive substance called hexogen instead of the harmless acid. Because citric acid and hexogen can appear alike, it was easy to confuse the two, especially if the containers were not clearly marked. When Volodymyr chewed on the gum, the pressure inside his mouth triggered a sudden blast. The force ripped apart much of his jaw, leaving him fatally wounded before medics could save him. The police and medical personnel at the scene were stunned. At first, they thought there might have been a small explosive device, or perhaps foul play. Their investigation revealed the truth was much simpler, yet more tragic. Volodymyr's curiosity led him to keep dangerous chemicals near everyday items, which proved deadly that day. Samples from his room confirmed that hexogen was indeed the cause of the explosion. This unfortunate event shows how critical it is to maintain strict safety measures, even for home-based experiments. Storing chemicals in labeled containers and keeping them far from food or personal items can mean the difference between life and death. Volodymyr's error reminds us that even a minor slip in judgment can have catastrophic effects. Stories like his raise awareness among hobbyists and students who may find chemistry fascinating and want to explore it independently. Without following proper guidelines, they risk harming not only themselves, but also anyone else nearby. Sure, mixing substances can feel rewarding when you learn how they react, but that excitement should never overshadow the need for caution. Hexogen is known to be about 4 times stronger than TNT and is handled only in controlled settings. When something so dangerous ends up next to a harmless product like gum, tragedy can strike in seconds. Volodymyr's life ended in a violent explosion, all because of an accidental mix-up. In the end, the lesson is clear. Chemistry demands respect. Even well-meaning curiosity can become a deadly force if chemicals are not handled with care. Volodymyr's story continues to warn others that one tiny mistake can bring irreversible loss. Police investigation. Police work can sometimes involve cases that seem too strange to be real. In Konotop, Ukraine, officers arrived at a home after hearing reports of an explosion in a young man's mouth. They found the victim, Volodymyr, lying face down with severe injuries to his jaw. Investigators immediately collected whatever was left of his gum and other powders in the room. At first, they suspected foul play or a hidden device, but tests revealed something even more shocking. The gum contained a powerful explosive known as hexogen. It turned out Volodymyr had been mixing chemicals at home and accidentally dipped his gum in the wrong powder. The police concluded it was a tragic mistake caused by his own chemistry experiments. In another case, officers in Deer Park, Texas, looked into the sudden death of an 8-year-old boy on Halloween night in 1974. As a result of their careful investigation, they discovered that the boy's father, Ronald Clark O'Brien, had slipped cyanide-laced candy to his son and other children. Digging deeper, the police learned that O'Brien had large debts and had bought hefty life insurance policies on his children. This evidence led them to charge him with murder. Because of the thorough work done by detectives, O'Brien was later convicted and sentenced to death. Sometimes, police save lives on the spot. In England on January 13, 2024, Officer Chad Stevens spotted a car driving very slowly with its hazard lights on. He pulled over to see if there was trouble. A woman got out, clutching her throat. Realizing she was choking, he used the Heimlich maneuver to clear her airway. Her gum shot out, and she was able to breathe again. Without his quick thinking and training, it could have turned into a fatal accident. Another incident involved a 3-year-old boy named Damien, who choked on a quarter-sized candy in a store. The clerk called 911, and paramedics arrived along with a police officer wearing a body camera. The footage showed the officer performing the Heimlich maneuver on the child. Thanks to that fast response, Damien coughed up the candy and could breathe again. In more complex investigations, police sometimes team up with health departments. In 2015, when nearly 2,000 people in the Philippines got sick after eating contaminated candies, local authorities and national health officials traced the source to a factory with poor sanitation. In 2016, police in Pakistan discovered a bakery owner deliberately laced sweets with pesticide during a family dispute, causing 33 deaths. These cases highlight how officers play a vital part in uncovering the truth, whether it involves a single tragic mistake or a larger plot to harm many people. Through on-the-ground work, careful evidence gathering, and cooperation with other agencies, police help piece together stories hidden behind everyday items like candy and gum. Lessons from the case. Mistakes, carelessness, and hidden dangers can turn sweets into a source of harm, as shown by the stories in this case. One key lesson is the importance of being careful when storing and handling chemicals. In Ukraine, Volodymyr kept a powerful explosive compound next to citric acid, leading to a tragic mix-up that cost him his life. Proper labeling of containers and researching how certain substances should be stored can prevent awful accidents like his. Another lesson is that overconfidence in harmless treats can be deadly. A 17-year-old girl believed antacid gummies were always safe, so she ate huge amounts without realizing the risk of hypercalcemia. Even everyday items can become harmful when used the wrong way or in large doses. This applies not just to sweets, but also to other things we might overindulge in, thinking they are harmless. Allergies pose a different but equally serious threat. The death of a young dancer who ate mislabeled peanut cookies highlights the need for accurate product information. Even one small slip in labeling can kill someone with severe food sensitivities. It's a reminder to double-check ingredients and to ask questions if something seems off. Meanwhile, criminal intent can turn candy into a weapon. The stories about the candy man, who laced his son's Halloween candy with cyanide for insurance money, and the woman who poisoned chocolates out of jealousy, show us that such crimes, though rare, do happen. Sweets aren't always a symbol of innocence. In the wrong hands, they become a deadly tool. This reminder pushes families to stay watchful, especially around major holidays like Halloween. Poor sanitation and carelessness in production or packaging can also lead to large-scale poisonings. In the Philippines, candies tainted with bacteria cause thousands of people to fall sick. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, a bakery owner purposely added pesticide to desserts, affecting dozens of people at a child's birthday party. These cases show how dangerous it is when factories or small shops ignore hygiene standards or let personal disputes drive them to harm others. Lastly, the choking incidents tied to gum and candy warn us that sweets can become a life-threatening hazard in an instant. Whether it's a child or an adult, choking can happen anytime, especially if someone is startled or falls. Quick action, such as performing the Heimlich maneuver, can save a life, but prevention is always better. Be mindful of situations where gum or candy may become a risk. Trauma to first responders. When police officers and medics arrive at any emergency scene, they never know what horrors they might face. In one particularly tragic case from Konotop, Ukraine, the first responders found a 25-year-old student lying face down, unconscious. His jaw and lower face were disfigured from a sudden explosion that happened the moment he decided to chew gum. The officers tried to turn him over, only to realize that much of his face was gone. This shocking discovery became a nightmare for everyone present, leaving scars not only on the victim's loved ones, but also on the first responders themselves. Such unsettling sights can have a lasting impact on police officers, firefighters, and medics. These brave men and women must perform their duties, gathering evidence or delivering medical aid, all while processing the fear and sadness that can follow a scene of extreme injury. Even after they leave, the memory of the victim's wounded face may haunt them at odd moments, during quiet nights, in dreams, or when they are off duty. This kind of mental strain is often called cumulative stress, or even secondary trauma. Sometimes, first responders develop anxiety or depression because of the terrible situations they encounter. They may blame themselves if they cannot save a life or if they think they acted too slowly, even when they did everything by the book. It can hurt their confidence, make them doubt their abilities, and lead them to question whether they can continue working in such a challenging field. Sadly, some feel they have to hide these emotions, fearing that showing vulnerability will be seen as weakness. This can worsen their internal struggles over time. In this tragic chewing gum explosion, officers and medics had little they could do to help. The explosive compound, mistaken for a harmless powder, left the victim beyond saving. Handling such a scene, full of blood and trauma, is not something training can fully prepare a person for. These first responders must then return to their families and normal duties, carrying the weight of what they have seen. Their support systems, family, friends, or official counseling, become crucial resources to help them cope and heal. Departments are increasingly aware of these issues, offering crisis debriefings or mental health programs to guide their employees through the aftermath of harrowing calls. Peer support groups, where officers and medics can safely share their distressing experiences, can also help reduce the feeling of isolation. Acknowledging emotional fallout is the first step in addressing it. For those who dealt with the Ukrainian gum explosion, the image of a disfigured young man may remain etched in their minds. Though these professionals are trained to stay calm under pressure, they are still human. Each heartbreaking case reminds us that the cost of saving or investigating lives can be more than physical danger. It can also deeply wound the hearts and minds of those sworn to protect us. Public awareness. Public awareness plays a vital role in preventing tragedies linked to everyday products. Whether it is explosive gum, poison treats, or choking hazards, people need clear information to protect themselves and those around them. When a young Ukrainian man named Volodymyr dipped his gum in a powerful explosive by accident, it turned a harmless habit into a fatal event. Had he known the risks of storing his chemicals next to food-related items, this disaster might have been avoided. Unfortunately, many do not realize the deadly results of such oversights until it is too late. Beyond just personal storage habits, public awareness campaigns can shed light on the hidden dangers in everyday sweets. In the Philippines, contaminated candies sickened almost 2,000 people, including many school children. If consumers had been more aware of possible bacterial contamination or poor hygiene in food production facilities, they might have chosen safer sources or demanded higher standards from local suppliers. Likewise, in Pakistan, a bakery owner deliberately poisoned a batch of sweets, causing multiple deaths at a birthday celebration. Public awareness programs that encourage people to check food quality, support trusted suppliers, and report suspicious activity can lower the chance of such crimes. Knowledge about product labeling also proves essential. Many rely on ingredient lists for guidance, especially those with allergies. Yet mistakes happen, sometimes with fatal consequences. The tragic loss of a young dancer who ate peanut-laced cookies highlights the need for reliable labeling and an informed public that knows to question labels and look for signs of tampering. Encouraging people to pay attention to even seemingly minor details, like odd tastes, strange odors, or packaging flaws, can save lives. Accidental choking remains another problem that simple public awareness can help solve. Stories abound of children and adults who have nearly died from chewing gum or from candies lodged in their throats. Learning basic first aid, such as the Heimlich maneuver, empowers bystanders to take quick action. When a police officer spotted a choking woman on the road and saved her life, his knowledge and calm response made all the difference. Public service announcements, classes, and social media campaigns can teach these vital skills. Cautionary tale. A single mistake can turn a sweet treat into a heartbreaking tragedy, reminding us that caution is not just for dramatic stories but also for everyday life. These stories show that candy, gum, or cookies can carry unexpected risks if we fail to be vigilant. Consider the young Ukrainian student named Volodymyr, who enjoyed adding citric acid to his gum for extra flavor. One day, he reached for the wrong container. Instead of harmless acid, he dipped his gum into powerful explosives he was storing for experiments. The result was a sudden blast in his mouth, causing a fatal injury that shocked police and medics alike. Another cautionary tale involves a birthday party and a seemingly innocent cake in India. A little girl named Manvi celebrated turning 10 with a sweet dessert from a local bakery. By the next day, she had passed away, and several family members felt very ill. Tests revealed that the cake held far too much saccharin, triggering a deadly spike in blood sugar. What was meant to be a happy event ended in heartbreak, proving that even common sweeteners need to be handled carefully. In another case, a young dancer with a peanut allergy bought cookies labeled as safe. A few bites later, she suffered a severe allergic reaction, even using her emergency injection to try to survive. Sadly, it was not enough. The cookie company had failed to list peanuts on the package, and that small oversight claimed a life. This highlights how a simple label error can turn fatal for someone with serious allergies. Then there is the girl who ate too many antacid gummies, hoping to both calm her stomach and strengthen her bones. She believed the calcium in the gummies would help her body. Over time, she swallowed so many that she developed hypercalcemia, which blocked crucial signals in her brain and nervous system. She lost track of hours and ended up in the hospital, barely able to piece together what had happened. Intentional harm also appears in these stories. A man from Texas added cyanide to candy, hoping to collect on an insurance policy, while a woman in Brighton laced chocolates with poison out of jealousy. Both show that sweets can be turned into weapons by those with dark motives. Even ordinary gum has caused choking incidents, sometimes leading to death. For every cautionary tale, the main message endures: remain watchful, ask questions, and remember that common treats can carry hidden dangers. By staying informed and careful, we honor the memory of those who suffered and worked to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe.